Hey everyone, welcome to week 25. This is day 3, Wednesday. And this is our week where we're doing sacrifices. And what we've been sacrificing is tiny little details. So we're concentrating on the idea of the whole. Monday, we painted Danny. Danny at like around 5:55 p.m. So everything was just like super gray violet. Yesterday, just to do something a little bit different for Spanish Tuesdays, Martes Español, we painted a street, a beautiful sunlit street in Rome. And today we're going to do something a little bit different, but I think it's going to be pretty cool. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, let's get started. Now, for this week, remember, we're doing our sacrifices week. And what we're sacrificing is the developing of small details. We're not going to try and avoid details. We're going to try to evoke details. So I think that to me is a perfect painting. A painting where you don't have to just labor endlessly trying to describe the minutia of the painting, but where you can actually paint the bigness of the painting, and within that bigness there are hints of the smaller parts that make up the whole. And by hinting at them, by really intelligently trying to see where those are in relationship to the whole of the image, how those small details present themselves within the bigness, within the wholeness, within the integral quality of the picture, then if we concentrate on that, we are not going to feel this need to kind of labor over and over and over those little pesky details. That doesn't mean that I don't like a detailed painting. If I think of Ophelia by Millet, that's an amazing painting. That's a ridiculously beautiful painting. Or if I think about Alma Tadema and one of his paintings that is inundated by flowers, I love that. I absolutely love that. So it's not to say that I don't appreciate information. I just think that as representational painters, we have a choice. You could argue that there is a difference from, Van Eyck to Velázquez, where Velázquez would just insinuate everything, but you wouldn't miss anything. You wouldn't really feel like there's an absence of information and that he was making up for it by just being this kind of impressionistic type of painter. No, I really feel that everything is there, that the way in which he would understand the world, the way in which he would understand the essence of nature was such a broad manner of seeing the world that he was able to translate that into painting. He was just amazing at understanding how to take that big view of the world, that very deep understanding of the makeup of things, and then say, I'm going to state it simply through painting. And if I really have to pick a place in history, I think I would pick the side that decides to understand the world through simplicity. There are very complex things in nature that a lot of painters want to try and resolve, and they do it through this, incredibly amazing undertaking where they are just insanely committed to speaking about all the tiny parts that make up that whole. That's incredible, and I respect that immensely, and that is, again, a lot of devotion, a lot of commitment, a lot of time and energy, and we should really celebrate those things. But if I have to take a stance somewhere, it would have to be in the place where you suggest instead of describe everything, to the last little moment. For me, suggesting is a place where you actually invite the observer, and that role that the observer is going to play in the painting, by finishing the painting, projecting her or his own experiences, I think that that's magical. I think that actively speaks about the participation that we as observers can have in somebody else's painting. Again, this is purely subjective. This is just me. And you could totally be on the other shore. You could be on the side of people that just, labor and work really hard at trying to make all these parts work. And you could argue that doing detail masterfully is about balancing the part and the whole and trying to work all that detail and still maintaining an idea of the whole is something that's quite remarkable, and I actually acknowledge that, and I think it's incredible, and I think it's absolutely amazing. One of the most jaw-dropping paintings that I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if it's one of my favorite paintings of all time, but it's the Jan Matejko painting of the Battle of Grunwald that's at Warsaw, at the National Museum in Warsaw. And this is a humongous painting. It's an absolutely huge, huge painting. It's how Rubens would have painted. It's how the whole school of Rubens, the whole workshop of Rubens would have painted if they were painting in the end of the 19th century. Matejko was just enamored by information and detail and historical accuracy, and he studied the history behind the paintings he was going to paint. It was just profound studying, deep devotion to all that information. So when you see these paintings, it's almost like entering like Homer's candy world. So everything is just absolutely delicious. But you could argue that, for example, in Matejko's painting, it is just a lot. It is so much. You actually have to take an aspirin after you see this painting because your head just doesn't really know where to go. And I guess a lot of people kind of love this sort of stuff. It's almost like a Where's Waldo of painting where you just pick a little area and you go like, oh my God, look what's happening over here. Oh my God, look at this guy's expression and look at his armor and look at this horse, it's going crazy and look at all these weapons. And people love those sort of paintings that you can actually travel and then stop and then say, let's just look at this tiny little moment of the painting for like half an hour. And it's almost like small stories. And by the end, what you're doing is making a sort of anthology of all these little moments that are in the painting that eventually make up this huge area that you have to traverse. But when you step back, and with a Matejko painting, you have to step really back, I don't know, the sense of the whole is kind of lost. You know, it's a ton of noise. Let me state again that this is one of the most remarkable paintings I've ever seen in my life. I actually, after seeing that painting, and I've spoken about this at the Vatican, Matejko's painting at the Vatican, I went to Poland just to see Matejko's work. Eventually, I ended up seeing some of the most amazing paintings I've ever seen. But initially, my drive was just to see Matejko and Malszewski. So this was a really important painting for me to see. This was like a moment in my life where I wanted to see this painting, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. It is almost like an altarpiece, that painting, where you just have to be there for days so you can soak everything in. And you know, you're not going to be able to soak everything in. It's that massive of a painting. But again, it is a painting where there's so much attention and there's so much love for history and there's so much kind of devotion to trying to faithfully recount this story that I think that there's an idea of bigness that is getting lost. You almost have this obligation to speak about all these things. You have to tick all these boxes and speak about all these characters and what they were doing and their personalities, that in the end, it's just almost impossible. It's an impossible task to say, I'm going to put all of these personalities and have one single painting, one very powerful message coming through. I think that, again, if we notice what we're doing during this week, sacrifices mean that because you are pushing something so much, you are going to eventually have to let go of other things. And I think that in that Matejko painting, what he left behind was the idea of the whole. And that's totally fine. Again, this is totally fine. This is why I don't believe there's perfect paintings. Sometimes I hyperbolically say, oh my God, this is a perfect painting. This is as good as you could paint. This is amazing. And I guess it's because those paintings just strike a chord with me that I'm like, okay, that's it. You know, this is absolutely amazing. Hendrik bathing in the river, that's a perfect painting. In my mind, it's like, that is an absolutely perfect painting. That's just my body just saying, oh, I just think that the intent is communicated beautifully. There is no dissonance between the intent and the execution. And I think that that's what I'm referring to when I describe a painting as being quote unquote perfect. But there's nothing perfect in this world. So, you know, there's no painting that can tick all these boxes. So if we think about that Matejko painting, we're actually taking the complete opposite stance where we're saying, I am going to try and achieve synthesis in my painting and just really look hard at the bigness of this image. I actually remember the exact moment where I understood that this was something that was going to be really important and relevant in my career, or in the painter that I was going to try to be in the future. It's actually kind of, I don't know. It's still a little disheartening, I feel, because I don't know if you guys remember, but I think that I spoke about how there's sometimes a separation between the painter that we are versus the painter that we would want to be. And ideally, that makes no sense because we should really just be the painter that we want to be. And we should just work in a very straight line towards the painter that we want to be and produce the paintings, the exact paintings that we want to produce. But I think that all of you out there have felt this and know that this is maybe not true. Life gets in the way in so many manners, and it affects our painting, or our concentration isn't there, or the market that we've created for ourselves just kind of goes against the things that we would want to make, or the critical opinion is not really the best when we show the things that we would really want to make. And sometimes we bend and we sacrifice that vision that we had of ourselves just to sympathize with what people are actually expecting of our work or with what makes sense commercially. And that is totally fine. Like, that is totally understandable. But there is something to be said about us in the long run, just striving to be the painters that we want to be. And what I was referring to is that there's a moment where I realized what type of painter I wanted to be. It was a retrospective that there was at the Met, maybe in 90 something, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, whatever. It was probably 95, 96, of Proudhon, this neoclassical, sometimes they call him like a neoclassical and a romantic painter. I really feel that he is kind of in the middle, almost like straying a little bit towards the neoclassical side of painting, even though he is not as good as David or Ingres. And if you think about romanticism, French romanticism, he is certainly not as good as Delacroix or Géricault. I don't know, he's in the middle, and he does seem like a painter that's kind of stuck in the middle. He was very famous because Napoleon held him in high esteem. He painted his 2 wives. He was sort of like a court painter in that sense. So he was very respected there. But I actually think that this is one of those examples where we have an artist that is a terrific draftsman because he's an absolutely terrific draftsman. It doesn't matter if you're against, like me, I think that fundamentally I'm against classical idealization of form. And he was certainly neoclassical in that sense, but his drawings are fantastic. Even though you can see classicism in those drawings, you can see that he understood beauty in a very idealized way. Every time I see his drawings, it's like, oh my God, this is an incredible draftsman. And the most amazing thing is that show at the Met had a ton of his drawings. I mean, over 50 of his drawings. I remember seeing just a ton of his drawings. Those blew me away. And they also had some paintings. And this is the thing. You know how you always hear like, for you to be a good painter, you have to be a good draftsman. Well, this is one of the really, really most amazing draftsmen in like drawing history, I would say, because his drawings are that good. We have to accept that. And yet he was a horrible painter. And I'm sorry, I'm sorry to say this. And some people are going to say, "Oh, come on, he wasn't horrible. I mean, he wasn't that bad." But I don't think that the traits that you would see in his drawing, all the beautiful things that were inherent to his drawing, they don't even show up when he's painting. They're not even there. Aside from him being just technically terrible at painting. I mean, some of his darks just really fall apart. I think that that had to do, I'm not quite sure, but I remember hearing this, and maybe somebody can shine some light onto this. But that was a time where they were covering their paintings, or they thought it was a good idea to cover their paintings or their darks with asphaltum or with tar or something like that. I should have looked this up before the audio, but I trust my memory, and I think it's something of the sort. And they made some terrible decisions. They were trying to like experiment in some ways. I know that he was trying to do some of that. So some of his larger paintings, again, particularly in the darks, oh my God, they are in horrible state. I mean, really, really terrible state. So aside from technically just not being very adept, I don't think he's a strong painter. I just don't. His paintings do nothing for me. If I'm not mistaken, at that show at the Met, at that retrospective, they had one of his big paintings that, unfortunately, this painting influenced Géricault a lot. So he actually studied Proudhon, and I don't know what he saw in that painting. I mean, you could kind of tell that it was maybe a tiny little spark, and he needed that to do his raft of the Medusa. But no, I mean, Géricault is 10,000 times the painter and the artist that Proudhon was. So, I don't know. Anyways, they had this really big painting that's called Justice and Divine Vengeance Pursuing Crime. And I guess that's his more famous painting. And there's actually studies of this painting. There's a head that he does in drawing that's actually really expressive and very beautiful. But I think the painting, is not really that great. And he was trying to do something that was a little hard. He was trying to have like a moonlit painting. So the moonlight was his strongest light source. And he was actually trying to balance that out with a secondary light source, with that torch that the allegorical figure was carrying. And for the time, that was something that was not common. So, props to him for doing that, because that was tough. That was actually very, very tough. And it is actually super tough when you consider that he's trying to balance a very moody light source, cool, like it was direct moonlight, with a very sharp, almost atmosphere-filling also light source, which was the torch, that is completely opposite in terms of temperature. So trying to have those two moments, those very, very attractive moments in terms of light source, and balance them out and give them the character that they deserve, was actually very, very tough. I can totally understand that. But the thing is, they had this painting, and they also had a couple of studies hanging right next to this painting. And I remember looking at the large painting and saying, this is not doing it for me. And then I saw these studies, and I was like, okay, this is amazing. This is really amazing. I could see these studies becoming a super strong painting, because the studies would have all the energy of what he wanted to do with the painting. But then something happened, and I guess you could say that it was just kind of like a technical mishap, or it was just this desire to almost satisfy these two shores, the neoclassical shore and the romanticism shore. And I don't know. I don't know if he was just caught in the middle and he just kind of didn't know how to work that out. But clearly, the energy, all the strength that is present in the sketches didn't really carry on to the large painting. At least that is my perception. But I remember just feeling that immediately when I saw these works. And 20 years later, I still look back and I look at the sketches. And again, these are not Rubens quality color sketches. These are not studies that are absolutely masterful. But I think I would favor the study over the large painting. That is something that I've kept with me throughout my whole life. The fact that I would see studies constantly in shows and exhibitions and museums, and just small paintings that would be so charged with directness and with the ability to convey a message in such a straightforward fashion, that I always had to accept that those moved me sometimes a lot more than these big, elaborate, finished paintings that were really wonderful. But it was a matter of choice. It was just me saying, oh, I actually prefer this. I have to not feel guilty about preferring this over something that is far more developed, which is something that I've actually struggled with, because I thought, yeah, that's a study, but it's a study for a painting. Like, you actually hit it out of the park with the painting, with the final painting. The study is just a way to get there. And I was like, well, why can't this study just be? Why can't this just be the painting? It doesn't have to be a study for anything. It just has to be a painting. And this is the moment that I was speaking about. This is where I imagined myself as a painter. And I was like, what if this large painting, this very pretentious, complex painting, what if it was just a large sketch, quote unquote sketch or study? That would be incredible. In my mind, I was like, yeah, but what would I need to do that? Like, if I were going to paint that, what would I need? And, I was a student back then, and I was thinking, oh my God, I need like a crap ton of paint. That's what I would need. Because if you extrapolate what you're doing in a sketch and you blow it up to a painting that's, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 times its size, then you would need a brush that it's 15 times, the size that you were using to do that sketch, and 15 times the paint that you would be using to do that sketch. So I thought that was really wonderful. Just that play in my mind where I would be holding, these humongous brushes, and I would be super far back. I would be like 5 meters away from my painting, and I would be just using bucket loads of paint. I was like, hell yeah, that would be like a freaking amazing painting to execute. And that is the painter that I would love to be. This sounds kind of weird and dumb, even if it sounds like a caricature of the painter that I want to be. That is kind of what I would want to do. I still have this idea in my mind floating where I would just love to paint huge sketches, huge sketches. That to me is like my paradise of painting. If I could just capture the energy that is in a small study and then showcase it in a huge way, oh my God, that's still the painting that I would love to paint one day. This is actually really wonderful that I'm pushing myself to kind of veer towards the painter and towards the things that I would love to emphasize a little bit more within my painting. Even if, I have to sacrifice things along the way. Even if I don't make paintings that I spent a month and a half or 2 months, large compositions that are a little more complex. Even if I have to put those aside for a little bit of time, I don't mind doing that. I think that what I'm doing here, the things that I'm paying attention, the things that I'm letting myself do during this exercise, during this time, I don't know how they're going to affect me in the future. I think they're going to be incredibly powerful because I am feeling that they are really shaping me as an artist right now. But I don't know what that's going to translate. I don't think that this is the preparation to do something magnificent in the future. I actually live every single painting in that single day. And that's about it. That's all I need. I'm not really thinking 10 steps ahead. I'm not thinking 2 years into the future. I'm not saying, well, this is nice, but, in the future, when I put all of this together and then just do a kick-ass, large, incredible painting, then and only then, all of these little paintings are going to be worth it. And it is then that they are going to show their worth. No. This process that I'm in, I think, is not conducive to that idea, to that state of mind. I think that where I'm at is just doing a single painting in a single day, just a single execution, and just being there and just really trying to soak all that in. I have no idea what's going to happen. If today this painting of a paper cup with some French fries is the last painting that I'm going to do in my life, then let that be it, and let it speak about all the wonderful things that I saw in that paper cup and those fries. That was the painting that I wanted to paint. In many ways, I think that the chance to concentrate on who we want to be, even if it goes against a ton of things that we were, even if it means that we have to sacrifice a ton of things that people loved, and leaving behind aspects of our work where you received a ton of positive feedback, we should honor whatever painter we want to be. Even if we post something and it doesn't have likes, who cares about that? Even if we show it to our family and they go like, oh my God, you're going nuts. Like, this is so stupid. Even if people say, well, that's simple. That clearly took no time to do. We have to honor ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to say, this is the path that I want to be in. And for me, it was this. Even if it sounds weird, just saying, it was about seeing bigness in a paper cup and some French fries. And if a paper cup and French fries get me to speak about Matejko and Proudhon, then that is amazing. That's the beautiful thing about art. So that was it for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow where we tackle the wholeness of another painting. Thank you. Bye.